We're usually told that there are two ways to attain enlightenment. One way is you wake up first the heart and you develop unconditional love, and then eventually through this process you go up and you wake up this center, which represents or gives you or bestows on you wisdom. So that's the path of Bhakti Yoga, is the path of devotion, right? First we open the heart, and then we open this center and we attain wisdom. We need both to attain liberation, obviously. Feeling here and wisdom here. In the path of non-duality or the path of Advaita, we do the opposite. We open first this, and then we bring, from here, we open the heart. We open towards unconditional love. So the first step is to attain the necessary wisdom to be able to love unconditionally, right? Which path is better? There is not such a thing. It's very personal. Is what you feel called for. What type of path is more appropriate for you? In my case, I participated in a form of Bhakti Yoga for many, many years, and eventually I felt the need to move towards Advaita, and Advaita worked better for me. So waking up this center first was easier. I found that. But it's not necessarily for everyone. Well, to love unconditionally everyone, to love unconditionally plants and animals is very easy, right? That's not difficult. We can love dogs and cats and animals because of their immense innocence. It's very easy to love them, right? But when it comes to human beings, we realize that it is not so simple. Human beings can be very confusing. So in order to love everyone unconditionally, we need to understand, according to Advaita, some basic things. And they are not difficult to understand. So I hope that at the end of this session, you will have the tools to do this. Now, human beings are confusing, right? Because we all have had very different programmings or conditioning when we were children and later in life. So although we're all human beings here, each one of us has had a very different trajectory that has led you to this point where your conditioning, your programming in the mind-body system is very unique. So when we try to relate to somebody else aside from ourselves, which can be difficult too, then we have to deal with this, that we have a certain conditioning and the other person has a very different conditioning. Not to mention that perhaps the conditioning is not just the result of this incarnation, but it could be the result of many incarnations. So a long journey, right? That has led you to today have a very unique programming, a very unique conditioning. So when it comes to love somebody else, we need to deal with this difficulty that they have a very different conditioning. And it can be very puzzling also trying to figure out the conditioning of somebody else, because we don't know their journey, their story. We don't know whether their reactions, for example, are the result of a trauma when they were children, which many times is the case, right? And even our reactions can be the result of trauma when we were children. And these reactions may eventually become a real problem to relate, right? So Advaita or non-duality, what tries to help us to understand is that although we are different at that level, at the level of programming and conditioning, there is something in us that is not different, that is the same, and really the same. There is no difference whatsoever. So what could be in all of us that is completely the same, and it has nothing to do with our conditioning? Anyone can?
You're asking for
Yes.
consciousness.
Consciousness, right? Consciousness. Now, this word consciousness can be very tricky, right? Because we can hear the word consciousness, but we may not be able to relate to it. It's like it becomes a concept in the mind. It's an abstraction that we cannot grasp, right? Where is consciousness? Yes, I probably have a consciousness, but where is it in my experience, right? So that question, in fact, leads to the recognition of consciousness in your experience. When you begin to ask the question, okay, if there is consciousness here in this human experience, where is it? Right? Where is it? How can I connect with the consciousness that is in here? Right? So this issue of connecting with consciousness inside your own experience is, in a way, very, very fundamental. And consciousness, as she said correctly, is what is unifying all of us. Everything else is conditioning. Everything else is changing. But consciousness is constant, and consciousness is what is in all of us at this moment, and at that level we are one. Right? Because the consciousness that is looking through your eyes or through the eyes of anybody here in this room is essentially undifferentiated. It means it doesn't have specific qualities that you could say, this is my consciousness, right? Oh, I'm noticing there is my consciousness here. That's ridiculous. There is not such a thing, because consciousness is intrinsically indifferentiated. So if you have the still water in different containers with different forms and shapes, that the still water is just the still water. You cannot pinpoint, oh, this is the still water is special, right? So in the same way, the consciousness that is looking through our eyes, or we could call it also awareness, right? The awareness or consciousness that is looking through our eyes is hearing these words, is feeling the body through the sense of touch. That consciousness is completely undifferentiated. And therefore, we could say that there is one consciousness looking through all these mind-body systems, looking out towards the universe, and sensing, perceiving all the sensory inputs that are coming through the mind-body system. And not only consciousness is perceiving all the sensations, but it's also capable of being aware of the thoughts that are having in the head, yeah? The feelings in the heart, the emotions, all the sensations. It can also track your beliefs and say, oh, there is this belief here, that belief there. But the consciousness itself is undifferentiated. And then the beliefs are different. The sensations are different. The movie or the mind, the movie of the mind is different. But the subject that is watching the movie, that subject, consciousness itself, is the same. It's undifferentiated. So in each one of us, this consciousness is alive at this very moment. It's not an abstraction. It's something very, very real, very concrete. And it's something that can be noticed. So I invite you to take a moment and notice the presence of consciousness in this moment, through the mind-body organism you call I. Please take a moment to do that and see if you can notice that there is an immense amount of data coming in at this moment, but there is also a camera perceiving that, and that is consciousness. Just notice it. Can you? So the first step we need to attain is the capacity to notice the presence of consciousness in ourselves. And there's nothing difficult about it. All this data, all these sensorial experiences are being received or perceived by something. That something is awareness. There is awareness of all this data, and that awareness can be noticed. Yeah. There is so much awareness at this moment, so much information that is being perceived at this moment. And there is a perceiving of the information. That perceiving, that is more like a verb. If we were to use an appropriate word, we would say awarenessing, or we would say perceiving or consciousnessing this moment. And it's here, right now, in each one of you. Otherwise, you would be dead, because this awarenessing that is happening at this moment is life itself. No awareness whatsoever, no life. Right? So now, I would like to know if any of you was able or has been able at some point in your life to notice that there is awareness in your experience. You have? Yes? You too? You too? You too? Yes? 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 Very good. That's a very important step. Most people will never reach that step in this lifetime.